Watch how the third quarter goes down. At least they called this one. Asia Wilson creams Lexie Hull like she did 5 times in game 1. Peggy Hammock could get 15 calls in a row and one goes another way and she starts screaming and crying. Asia Wilson doesn't like Lexie Hull. She's always pushing her, but that's an illegal screen, and then Lexie Hull gets called for a foul.
Let's be brutally and unequivocally clear. The Indiana Fever didn't just watch Game 2 slip away. They watched it get ripped directly from their hands, not because they were outmatched, but because the referees practically handed it over to the Las Vegas Aces. The final stat line tells the story of a slugfest, a staggering 41 total fouls, with an almost unbelievable 16 of them called in a single chaotic quarter. Players were being thrown to the ground with a reckless abandon that bordered on assault, and yet somehow through all of this, Aja Wilson walked away being praised for her stat line, while the Warrior Lexie Hull was forced to play through a painful back injury she sustained in Game 1 from that very same brand of physicality. This wasn't professional basketball, it was chaos disguised as a defensive strategy. So the ultimate question becomes, how did the Indiana Fever even manage to fight back through all of that orchestrated chaos? And what does their incredible resilience in the face of it all mean as the series now shifts back to Indiana? We want to hear from the Fever faithful. Show your support for this team's incredible fight by commenting, "Let's go, Lexie. Let's go," down below.
I mean, it feels like a physical game every game. Feels like it's been a physical season. But yes, I think, I feel like I've been on the ground a little bit more this series so far. But we just keep getting back up, so that's all you can really say.
How in the world did the Indiana Fever walk directly into Las Vegas, confront the 2-time defending champions, deal with a barrage of whistles that were already leaning the wrong way, and still manage to leave town with a dominant double-digit win? Let's be clear, Game 1 wasn't just a victory, it was a shot fired across the bow of the entire league, putting everyone on immediate notice. The Fever went into that pressure cooker of an opener with a level of calm, veteran-like discipline that you simply do not see from a young team. And right from the opening tip, Kelsey Mitchell completely silenced any and all doubts, lighting up the scoreboard with a playoff career high of 34 points. Every single time Las Vegas tried to press, Indiana pushed right back, not with wild flair, but with a cold, calculated control, absolutely refusing to let the tempo of the game get out of their hands.
Take that. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. That's one. That's one. That's one. Yeah. Fever, go. That ain't song and dance to me, man. I'm just grateful, man. I love basketball. I love playing with my team. So let's take what we can get.
And then we come to the Aces' supposed trump card, Aja Wilson, the reigning league MVP, who found herself trapped in an absolute nightmare of a shooting night. She managed just 6 makes on a staggering 22 attempts. 6. The Indiana Fever's stifling defense consistently forced her into tough, low-percentage looks. They contested absolutely everything near the rim, and they made certain she had to physically work for every single solitary bucket. That right there was the entire story of the game. You had one team executing with an almost surgical precision, all without fouling, while the supposed powerhouse squad on the other side couldn't even buy a shred of rhythm on their own home court.
Asia Wilson, look at that foul they called for her. Yeah, saved her. That's some bullcrap. I love Aaliyah Boston. Great job today playing defense. Look at that. Another foul. Bailed out by the refs. I get pissed off. This is the worst one. They call this a jump ball. How is that a jump ball? Nobody even had possession. Aaliyah Boston, that's anything is over the back. Not a jump ball.
And what made the sting of this loss even more acute for Las Vegas was the surrounding context. They were at home. They had the referee's whistle seemingly bending in their direction, and they had a national media narrative that was already suggesting an easy, almost effortless series win. Instead, the Indiana Fever held their ground, absorbed the pressure, and walked out of that arena with a stunning 16-point blowout victory. Even in the immediate aftermath, astute fans immediately noticed the cracks in the foundation. That lopsided foul count felt incredibly off, even in a decisive victory. But the sheer magnitude of Indiana's win was so profound that it temporarily buried those simmering complaints. And yet, that clear undercurrent of officiating bias wasn't truly ignored. It was merely brushed aside because the Indiana Fever had handled their business regardless of the obstacles thrown in their way.
And Asia Wilson and the Las Vegas Aces lose Game 1 on their home court to the Indiana Fever, 89-73. The Indiana Fever were in control of this game from start to finish.
That public embarrassment clearly and deeply fueled the Las Vegas Aces. A loss by a staggering 16 points was not something they could simply excuse away, and that is precisely why they stormed into Game 2 absolutely determined to completely change the tone of the entire series. The question was never if Las Vegas would respond. The only question was how far they would be willing to go. But at what ultimate cost did the Las Vegas Aces decide to fight back? Was Game 2 even a basketball game, or was it just a street brawl that the referees decided to dress up and label as playoff intensity? Because from the very opening minutes, it was abundantly clear that the Las Vegas Aces were not the slightest bit interested in playing a clean game of basketball.
In the WNBA, you cannot blindside somebody and set a screen on them without enough time for letting the player being screened react. And then look at this. This one, their arms lock up, but you gotta let go at some point. Like, you can't bring the person closer to you and just stay locked in while the offensive player is trying to get the rebound. But we know Asia Wilson only receives fouls.
They came out throwing arms, bodies were colliding with a violent intensity on every single possession, and the officials never once managed to establish any semblance of control. What should have been a back-and-forth high-level showcase for two great teams devolved into a brutal slog of 41 total fouls, with the piercing sound of the whistle never ceasing to cut through the arena. A staggering 16 of those fouls were called in just the third quarter alone, a stretch of the game where the Indiana Fever had absolutely no chance to find any offensive rhythm. Every single one of their attempts to build momentum was immediately chopped into pieces by a series of stoppages that seemed to consistently and suspiciously favor just one team.
So why don't you think you were able to find any flow, and when that was the case, what are you trying to do to jumpstart things, maybe on the defense?
Well, it's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul call every 10 seconds. I mean, it just really is. And when they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor. And that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively. We didn't counter that with our off-ball actions or with our back cuts. So they took us out of our comfort zone. I mean, offense is about rhythm, it's about timing, it's about spacing. We allowed them to do that, and they kept us from doing it.
The aggressive physicality wasn't just an occasional occurrence, it was the entire defining storyline of the game. Players were being openly shoved as they were cutting through the lane. Defenders were using their forearms instead of their footwork to gain an advantage. And on more than one occasion, a player ended up sprawled out on the floor after a particularly hard collision. But what stood out even more than the sheer number of fouls was the calculated way in which they completely broke the Indiana Fever's offensive pace. This is a team that thrives in a state of flow, a group that loves to run and share the ball, and instead, they were unceremoniously dragged into a brutal wrestling match that they had never asked to be a part of. While Las Vegas was busy piling up free throws, the Indiana Fever were being forced into a series of choppy, disjointed half-court sets, which is the least comfortable part of their entire offensive identity.
Yeah, Lexie, obviously you were a late add to the injury report today. Just how are you feeling this morning with your back, and what do you have to do to be able to play?
I mean, I'm feeling sore still, but I think just a lot of treatment, trying to get, our bodies as ready as we can be. Part of playoffs, I think, for everyone is it's the end of the season. Everyone's a little fatigued, everyone's a little sore. So just trying to go out there and do the best I can. A lot of treatment with our trainers. I'm really thankful for them to spend a lot of time with me today, a lot of time with me yesterday, getting me ready for tonight.
By all medical logic, Lexie Hull should never have even been out there on the floor. After sustaining a painful back injury in Game 1, she was officially listed as a game-time decision. Most players in that situation would have sat, healed, and waited for the series to shift back home. Instead, she taped herself up, gritted her teeth, hit the floor, and was immediately and relentlessly targeted by Las Vegas's overtly rough style of play. You could see it all happening in real-time contact after contact, bump after bump, with her landing hard on the hardwood on more than one occasion. And yet, in the face of all that punishment, Lexie Hull went to the arc and absolutely drilled 5 3-pointers, tying an Indiana Fever playoff record in the process. It wasn't clean, and it certainly wasn't pretty, but it was profoundly and beautifully defiant. After the game, she admitted, "I'm feeling sore still, but I think just a lot of treatment, trying to get, our bodies as ready as we can be. We're just pushing through." That is not a highlight reel quote. That is the raw, unfiltered voice of a player who knows she is being physically punished, but who absolutely refuses to fold.
This is what happened. They cut it to 8 and they get 4 fouls in a row. That was not a foul. That was not a foul. This is crazy. 4 consecutive fouls. So from 8, it goes to 13 really quick, and the rest was history. It looks like Howard got hit in the arm by 2 players. They don't call foul. It was a shot clock. But the rest of the game were just a whole bunch of fouls being called, people flying.
Meanwhile, the national conversation in the wake of the game didn't really focus on Lexie Hull's incredible grit or the Indiana Fever's desperate attempt to keep their season alive. Instead, it overwhelmingly celebrated Aja Wilson's individual stats: 25 points, 9 boards, 5 steals, 2 blocks. Those were the numbers being repeated everywhere. What was conveniently ignored in that narrative, however, was how she accumulated those numbers by physically bullying her way into the paint, by knocking people around with impunity, and by consistently benefiting from a series of calls that the Indiana Fever never seemed to get on the other end of the floor. The fans who were actually watching the game called it out for what it was, yet the headlines still framed her night as a dominant performance. But dominant is not the same thing as fair, especially when half of the opposing starters are left limping away from the contest.
Yeah, I mean, it's how you look at it. It looks, honestly, by some of the fouls and the way it was going, it looks like we were almost too physical, but yet at the same time, I feel like we have to be able to get that on the other end. I think, sometimes when you just look at the game as a whole, when you look at the way that it works, sometimes you manipulate it to different ways and you have smaller matchups. So, I mean, I just don't think it's really possible all the time for some of those smaller matchups to really do such a clean job of that. But hey, I'm here to hoop, so none of my business.
Aaliyah Boston lived that brutal reality. Possession after grueling possession, she still managed to add 10 points and pull down an impressive 13 rebounds, but it felt like every single one of them came with an accompanying hit to the ribs or a shove to the back. Paint touches that absolutely should have resulted in free throws were consistently ignored, turning into no calls. What people often forget is that Aaliyah Boston is only in her 3rd professional season, and yet she is already carrying herself with the poise of a seasoned veteran. Against the Las Vegas Aces, she wasn't given a single inch of space, and instead of complaining, she just kept fighting for every single board. It may have made her box score look steady, but in truth, it was pure survival basketball just to tally those numbers. And while the national spotlight was fixated on the big star names, it was Odyssey Sims who gave the Indiana Fever a chance to even breathe. She scored a critical 18 points, despite constantly having to dribble through double teams, enduring hacks at her arms, and dealing with a series of whistles that randomly stopped any semblance of flow she managed to find. Sims single-handedly turned half-broken possessions into crucial baskets, only to watch the very next trip down the court be completely erased by yet another stoppage. You could see her frustration visibly grow, but she never slowed down. For every single physical push Las Vegas delivered, Odyssey Sims shot back with a bucket. The real story of Game 2 wasn't that the Indiana Fever had failed, it's that they were simply not allowed to play their game. The grit was there in Hull's threes, in Boston's boards, and in Sims's drives, but every single surge they created was immediately stomped out by either a whistle or a shove. The Las Vegas Aces didn't expose any holes in Indiana's strategy. They simply leaned on a brand of foul-heavy chaos and rode it all the way to a victory. If you're asking how the Fever lost that game, the answer is not about who played better. It is painfully obvious that without the constant interruptions, Indiana's poise and shooting could have easily swung the game in their favor. The real question is, if Las Vegas truly needed help from both the whistles and brute physicality, what actually changed in their on-court tactics to so completely force Kelsey Mitchell out of the spotlight? If the refs were going to tilt Game 2 in the Aces' direction, then how did their actual game plan change to so completely shut Kelsey Mitchell down? That was the other, more strategic half of what made Game 2 so different. In Game 1, she had absolutely torched Las Vegas for 34 points, scoring in every way possible, catch and shoot, off the dribble, attacking the rim. But by the second game, she was completely smothered. Her point total dropped to just 13, and it wasn't because she had suddenly forgotten how to score. No, the Las Vegas Aces came into that game with one singular obsessive goal: squeeze her until there was absolutely no space left for her to operate.
There's foul on Young. Sims over. Asia Wilson, she had to put some extra arc on that.
They dedicated extra bodies to her, at times even resorting to face guarding her, even when she didn't have the ball. Every single cut she made to the basket turned into a gauntlet of bruises, and every screen that was set for her was immediately met with an aggressive, suffocating hedge. That one, calculated adjustment, completely changed the Indiana Fever's entire offensive flow. Instead of allowing Kelsey Mitchell to dictate the pace and stretch their defense thin, Las Vegas forcefully and strategically funneled the ball into different, less capable hands. Their aggressive double teams forced her passes into crowded, congested lanes, and by the time she was finally able to break free for a clean look, it was usually far too late in the shot clock. It was a smart, disciplined, and effective strategic change, but one that only looks clean on tape. In the actual game, it was far, far messier.
Step on that note with Kelsey just having a little bit of a, they were able to contain her a little bit more. How did you feel like they were able to be successful in that regard?
I mean, the physicality won. She's like a little pinball. I know that the museum's right down the street, so sometimes I feel like she's getting pinged around everywhere.
Ironically, even Becky Hammon, the head coach of the victorious team, was complaining afterward about the intensely physical nature of the matchup. Just think about that for a second. The Las Vegas Aces had just been rewarded all night long by a whistle that repeatedly stopped and started the game in their favor, and yet their own coach was not thrilled with how rough it ultimately got. That one, telling detail matters because it proves the final result didn't just ride on a tactical plan, it was also shaped almost entirely by a series of chaotic and questionable officiating decisions. The Aces' pressure on Kelsey Mitchell certainly worked, but the constant distracting stoppages completely clouded any fair measure of how truly effective those adjustments actually were. Inside, Aliyah Boston still fought like a warrior. She finished with 10 points and 13 rebounds, another tough, grinding night where she was forced to play more like a linebacker, crashing bodies, than she was a center working gracefully out of the post. But Las Vegas did something clever here too. They strategically stretched the floor on offense. They deliberately pulled her out of her comfortable defensive position, creating a series of mismatches that allowed Aliyah Wilson and Jackie Young to attack the rim without a true counter on the help side.
The physicality is out of control, that's for sure. I mean, you can bump and grab a wide receiver in the NFL for those first 5 yards, but you can do it in the W for the whole half court. You put two hands on somebody like that, it should be an automatic foul. They have the freedom of movement. Freedom of movement. There's no freedom. And I'm not saying that we're not fouling too. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's out of control.
And then there's the incredible story of Lexie Hull. The Las Vegas Aces may have succeeded in erasing Kelsey Mitchell for one night, but they could not, for the life of them, stop Lexie Hull. And remember, she had just sustained a painful back injury in Game 1. She was a legitimate game time decision, barely cleared by the medical staff to even take the floor. And yet, not only did she suit up, but she went out and absolutely drilled 5 3-pointers, tying the Indiana Fever's all-time playoff record in the process. That is not a fluke. That is pure, unadulterated mental toughness, and it is the exact tangible proof that this Indiana team absolutely refuses to quit, even when they are severely undermanned.
Now the starting point guard, and here's Hull, an early test. Great sign because her shooting has been off. Yes. Mitchell. Short. Hull with another offensive rebound, turn, shoots, scores. 2 of their last 3. Hull again, yes. Oh, you found it.
So yes, Las Vegas scored their adjustments. They executed their game plan, they leaned heavily on the whistle, and they ultimately walked off the court with the win. But now, the entire chessboard changes. The next time these two teams play, it will not be in the friendly confines of Las Vegas. It will be in Indianapolis, where the Aces won't just have to face Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, and Lexie Hull. They will have to face 17,000 rabid fans who now smell blood in the water, and who are planning to be louder than any single referee's whistle. What happens when a team that has been systematically roughed up, whistled out of their rhythm, and nearly injured on the road finally gets to walk back into their own building? That is what the Indiana Fever are about to find out as this entire series now shifts to Gainbridge Fieldhouse. After two absolutely bruising games in Las Vegas, where both the energy in the arena and a series of questionable whistles clearly tilted things in favor of the home team, the entire dynamic is about to flip. The Fever finally get to step into a place that feels like it is truly theirs, a place where every single bucket from Caitlin Clark or Kelsey Mitchell will be amplified by thousands of roaring voices instead of being completely drowned out by a hostile crowd.
Fever run still. Lexie Hull has scored the last 6 points for Indiana with a couple of threes. Mitchell, good look. And she got it. Kelsey Mitchell in that first half had 9 points, but was just 1 of 5 from 3-point range. It was Lexie Hull doing the damage from 3, and now she's doing a Kelsey Mitchell imitation of the night. Sims gets the roll.
And Gainbridge has already definitively proven that it is far more than just a simple home court. This season alone, we have repeatedly seen opposing teams completely stumble in the second half as the sheer volume of the noise level just keeps on building. The exact same kind of momentum swings that seem to evaporate into thin air in Las Vegas will now come roaring back to life in Indy. There are simply no dead moments at Gainbridge. The crowd stayed deafeningly loud through the runs, through the fouls, and through the inevitable missed calls. And while Las Vegas masterfully used their own crowd's energy to fuel their Game 2 victory, now it is Indiana's turn. Even Becky Hammon herself was forced to admit, our experience there has not been great this season. A statement that says a lot coming from a championship-winning coach. And that admission matters because any potential officiating bias can no longer hide in the silence when you have 17,000 passionate fans reacting to every single call in real time. The officials will not be able to miss the contact on Aaliyah Boston's post-ups when a deafening roar explodes at every single bump. They will not be able to ignore the body checks on Lexie Hull when the entire crowd is demanding accountability. That is the most underrated aspect of true home court advantage. You don't just get the friendly rims and the familiar surroundings, you get to apply a constant suffocating pressure on every single decision coming directly from the people who are watching the closest.
If I could just ask you to look forward to the series going to your home court in Indianapolis, how much is that really going to make a difference in this series, and how much does it mean to you guys to have that home court advantage?
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. Our fans, they show up and they show out, and so for us just, using that, our own energy, but also using the energy in the crowd, I think it's going to be really great for us.
Yeah, we're excited. I know the last time it was the first playoff game in a really long time, so to be able to have 2 more for our fans that have been there with us all season, I'm really excited for that, and we definitely do feed off of their energy, so we're really looking forward to it.
For the Indiana Fever, that energy is pure, high-octane fuel. Lexie Hull managed to tough out excruciating back pain in Las Vegas, hitting 5 massive threes despite being repeatedly hacked and knocked around. Aaliyah Boston collected rebound after rebound, all while absorbing far more physical punishment than the whistles ever reflected. Kelsey Mitchell was effectively locked down after her Game 1 explosion, but you can sense that her simmering frustration is about to be transformed into something far sharper and far more dangerous on her home court. This is the precise environment where those battle scars stop weighing players down and instead become a source of raw collective energy. We have seen it happen already. Earlier this year, the Fever were trailing by double digits at home, only to come storming all the way back once the atmosphere inside the building became completely suffocating for their opponent. That same dynamic shift is why these next 2 games are not just standard playoff stops. Games 3 and 4 in Indianapolis represent the exact moment where the Fever will turn their pain into power, and the Las Vegas Aces will be forced to step into a building where every single mistake gets magnified, and every Fever run feels completely and utterly unstoppable. The Las Vegas Aces may have used a combination of friendly whistles and physical bruises to steal Game 2, but Indiana's spirit never once cracked. What happened in Las Vegas will not carry the same weight in Indianapolis. Home court is now the Fever's primary weapon, loud, fearless, and absolutely impossible to ignore. Aaliyah Boston and Lexie Hull both admitted after the tough loss that they could not wait to get back in front of their own fans. As Hull said, "Our fans, they show up and they show out." If Indiana has already managed to dismantle Las Vegas once on the road and still fought through the ensuing chaos in Game 2, just imagine what comes next with Gainbridge packed to the rafters and ready to explode. Show your support for the Fever by commenting, "Let's go, Lexie," like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss out. Click the video on the screen, and we will see you in the next one.